Hey, welcome back to All Things Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Johnny, and this is my co host,
John?
And today we're going to be talking about hitting and how to teach it. Cue the intro music.
So, today we're going to talk about hitting and more specifically how to teach it, right? So, you and I have been working with hitters for a long time and knowing the swing and teaching the swing, not really the same thing, are they?
Right.
Yeah. So, what we're going to focus on today, I think, is how we teach and what's important and where hitting has come from. I was telling Johnny that I love this old clip of Babe Ruth where it's got to be in the 30s. He's got a bunch of kids and he said, "Kids, there's two kinds of hitters out there. There's swing hitters," and he has his hands at the bottom of the bat, and then there's choke hitters. And his choke hitters, they hit singles, and the swing hitters, they hit home runs. And that was pretty much the lesson that
choke hitters, they just choke up.
So that was the lesson,
Yeah,
right? So I was like, okay. And so what I was talking to Johnny about was it really wasn't until Ted Williams wrote his book, The Science of Hitting, that people really started to look at hitting and apply the science of it. And then lots of instruction came out for hitting. So I kind of look at it as kind of pre-Ted Williams and post-Ted Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he wrote The Science of Hitting, and I was telling Johnny that he really talked a lot about three main things. One was, picking a good pitch to hit. That was huge for him. He felt like everybody that he had interviewed, like Rogers Hornsby and Honus Wagner and, really the old-time great ones, he said they all said if you don't pick out a good ball to hit, you're not going to be a good hitter. So discipline. And then he found his rhythm and timing in his hips and his rotational power. So he was kind of the first to really talk about rotational hitting, whereas maybe prior it was linear, even if they didn't use that term.
And he talked about playing pepper too, right?
He did. He liked to control the barrel, and so he said that he played pepper as a kid, and it really helped him with his eye-hand coordination. I don't think people play pepper.
I don't think so. No, that was big when I grew up, and I'm sure for you it was. But
it was, yeah.
Yeah, there was wall ball and pepper and other small little games like that for hand-eye coordination.
What did your favorite player, one of your favorite players, play with his dad?
The seeds, right?
Yeah. What was that?
Yeah, it was, and it came out of the Dominican Republic. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but you have little seeds, and you just dart toss them in, and you have some sort of bat that you can use to try to hit those little seeds, and it helps you work on your hand-eye coordination and discipline because
right.
The seeds not going to be straight all the time.
Right.
And I attest that to one of my favorite hitters, watching Juan Soto right now, and he has arguably the best discipline in baseball right now. He walks more than he strikes out, I believe, right?
Yeah, so, he does, which is very uncommon for power hitters.
Very uncommon, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the great ones probably. But, and one of the things that we wanted to really focus on was that there's not really just one way to hit. Like, I remember watching a video of Carl Yastrzemski, and he was taking batting practice, and he was an all-time great. And all he did was pull the ball. Like he would pull the outside pitch, the inside pitch, and I thought, what is he working on? But it just worked for him. What we also wanted to kind of share with you was the commonality of some of the greatest hitters of all time. Mm-hmm. We researched what we considered to be some of the greatest hitters of all time. And interestingly enough, and I'll name them, the ones that we really spent a lot of time on was Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Barry Bonds, we give him his due, and then Willie Mays, Ted Williams, Hank Aaron, Stan Musial. They did this thing, and I have the bat for people who are not looking at this on YouTube. I have a bat in my hands, and they would waggle or tip the bat.
Oh, they can see it on Spotify too. That's okay.
Right. Okay. They would tip the bat and then slot it and get on plane of the pitch really early. And so I think Hank Aaron was like maybe the master at it, but they all were good at it. They all would. Barry Bonds would go this way, and then this way, and his hands were low. And so we noticed that the greatest hitters of all time for power and for average, they tipped the bat and slotted it and got it on plane very early. So they weren't steep and they weren't too uppercutty. I mean, you might say that Ted Williams had a little bit of an uppercut, but I would say that, Hank Aaron didn't. He was a line drive hitter.
Yeah.
He wasn't hitting balls 450 feet.
And take the lower half out of it, really. The lower half, you could see some hip slide, but it was still, they had a lot of integrity with their front foot. It wasn't like they were just sliding the hips and their front foot was going with it.
Right.
They had strong front leg.
Post leg,
yeah.
Yeah.
They could drive it
for sure
very well.
So we watched those hitters and looked at the commonalities, and it was amazing. I mean, although there are different ways to hit, and they didn't all hit the same. Willie Mays had a huge hitch, like a tip. Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. I mean, you could never tip that way today with the guys throwing that hard. Right. So, but in terms of just, the pure raw power that they created by unweighting the bat with the tip and then slotting it early and getting on plane, and then their rotational power, it was elite. And anybody who knows hitting would say that those guys, were elite. So once you start looking at the greatest swings of all time and you look at the fundamentals that go along with that, I think for us as hitting instructors that work with, youth hitters, you're trying to find ways to teach them, how to hit that will help them, improve. And I think that for us, we spent a lot of time talking about, drills and gadgets and we're in the StatCast era. So we're going to get a little bit into, some of the things that we like about the StatCast era, some of the things that we, maybe are not important. Maybe you should talk a little bit about that aspect, like maybe, exit velos and things like that.
Yeah, I think it's important to have a benchmark for certain ages. Coming from middle school to high school, there's a benchmark for your exit velocity, bat speed, attack angle, and launch angle.
And just for those who you don't know the difference, attack angle would be really the angle of your bat right before impact or at impact, the degree of angle of your bat to the ground, whereas launch angle is the ball coming off the bat. So,
yeah, and there's also a benchmark for high school hitters going into college to the pros. And I think, you want to have a number to get to as a goal, but it shouldn't always be the end-all be-all. You can be a great punch hitter. You don't have to have the most power. There are guys in the major leagues who probably only hit 5 or 6 home runs, but they hold a great batting average. Luis Arias comes to mind. He hits over 300 every year, but he doesn't have the power numbers because he's not a power hitting guy. He gets on base. He's leadoff.
We know that power is prevalent in the pros because that's what they pay, right?
Yes.
So guys are smart. They'll try to work on their power so they can get paid more. But the truth of it is if they can't maintain a decent batting average and on base percentage, then they don't last long.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So for us, just in terms of, we picked kind of a couple of players that we wanted to talk about before we get into our philosophy of hitting. Derek Jeter, Hall of Fame player, hit for a high average. When he first came up, he was a high draft pick. When he first, he kind of cast it a little bit. His hands got away from his body a little bit.
95?
He came up. He was in the minor leagues from I think he was like a 92 or 93 draft pick. And then he played a couple of years. And then I think he got a cup of coffee in 95. They kind of brought him up.
Yeah, and he didn't stay.
No, he didn't stay. I think they got bounced by the Mariners. But 96 was, of course, the year they won the World Series. And he was a big part of it as his true rookie year. But he was not a great hitter early on in his professional career. I think they saw that he was disciplined. I think they saw that he was, he worked extremely hard. Yes. And then what I heard him say when I was researching this was that he developed a discipline, right? And so why don't you talk a little bit about Derek Jeter's kind of discipline?
He was a leadoff guy, second hole guy, and he was looking to get on base and have Bernie or Mattingly or somebody drive him in behind him.
They played together for 1 year.
Right.
Yeah.
At the very beginning. So his elite approach became, I need to shoot the ball right center, backside gap,
Yeah.
and develop this inside out swing so that I can get on base and, take second or let,
Right.
one of the 3, 4 hole guys drive me in. And he became one of the best at it. He's a Hall of Famer.
He did. I heard him say to, I think, Harold Reynolds on MLB Network, he said that he always looked for a fastball down the middle. Always. He said, he was not a good guess hitter. He said a lot of hitters would, kind of think along with the pitcher and guess. But he said, if I look for a fastball down the middle, but I try to stay inside the baseball every time and shoot the ball to center or sort of right center, I felt like I'd have a split second longer to make a good decision and then hit that ball to the right side. And then if they did throw me, like on his 3,000th hit, he pulled it, but it was a breaking ball from a lefty. And he still stayed back.
Remember, he kind of dove into it and he got it. It was a home run.
I just said he stayed back, and then you said he dove into it. So I think you're right. He
hit it out.
Yes,
over left field. I remember that.
But he stayed back long enough to where he always got hit because he was on top of the plate and he kind of moved into the ball a little bit, but he threw his hands in really hard. You wouldn't necessarily teach his swing.
Because the chicken wing a little bit.
He did a little bit.
Yeah.
But his plan was to always look fastball where he wouldn't get beat by the fastball, but then keep his hands in so he never wanted to pull the ball foul, to the pull side. So anyway, we felt it was pretty fascinating to see him early on, see some footage of him early on when he struggled, in the minors when he first came up, and then watch how he developed this discipline that really worked for him.
Oh yeah.
Right. And so that's important because young hitters can learn from developing kind of a plan and a discipline that works. And so not everything is a cookie cutter.
Oh, definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
And you wanted to talk about Kyle Lewis.
Yeah. Kyle Lewis was a player I wanted to compare to Jeter because you see Jeter's trajectory. Kyle Lewis, who started out like a house on fire, his rookie year and won Rookie of the Year in 2020.
Shortened
season, yeah.
Right.
Who slowly, and I know he, struggled with injuries, but over time when he got back into the league, his swing and his confidence never really came back. His approach was never quite the same. And, J-Rod is now the starting center fielder for the Mariners, and he's a great player.
He's also struggling a little bit.
He is a little bit, but he what I told you a few days ago, his hard hit rate percentage is so high.
Right.
Even when he doesn't get base hits, he's still finding great balls to hit, and he still stays with his approach.
Do you think Kyle Lewis, maybe besides losing confidence, was he like a free swinger? Did he change his philosophy?
I think so. Looking back, I think he was chasing a little bit more. He struck out more.
Right.
And, when you don't have your legs, I believe it was knee
from his
problems.
Injuries.
Yeah,
he did a lot of knee problems. Yeah,
that can happen. You lose your legs and you're not driving the ball as hard and looking to chase pitches out of the zone more.
Right.
But I think seeing somebody who is on top of the world as a rookie.
Right. Rookie of the Year.
Yeah. That kind of, diminishes over time and then's out of the league within 3 years. Last year with the Diamondbacks, he was hitting, what was it, like 140, 150?
41 was his last season and they bounced him. So he's no longer in Major League Baseball. I don't know what he's doing.
You just hope these guys can get back to that approach that they were at their rookie year so that they don't backtrack and lose, all their credibility that they built their first year.
Yeah, I think there's that. And I think there's also like the pitchers, they just study to find your hole in your swing, to find like what it is that gets you out more often, and then try to obviously get you to like set you up for that type of a pitch. So usually in an at-bat in major leagues, you might get one pitch to hit, good pitch.
Yeah, and I heard Ian Kinsler talk about his gaming factor because just as you said, the pitchers are studying these hitters to get them out in ways that they know they have a weakness in.
Right.
It's also the hitter's job to adjust in at-bats to not only find where they're throwing their weaknesses at, but adjust to them.
Right.
And, fight. I think.
Well, the mentality of fighting up there is so important.
Yeah, there's no stat for being a gamer.
Right. That's a good point.
You know, 0-2, 1-2 can fight back in the
Right.
count and, get back and make it a quality at bat, or you go down swinging. We see some of our Yankees and some guys in the league that they fold. They fold pretty quickly.
They do. You kind of we predicted bats all the time. So we go, oh, this is the way this at bat's going to go with Stanton or or a particular player.
And it's the elite pitchers that what's going to happen ahead of time because they're so good. They'll pick out pitches that they want to throw, and advantage counts for the pitcher.
Right.
And they'll go right at you
for sure,
and they'll try to make you hit it.
Well, let's talk about our approach. So we're here, All Things Baseball podcast, and we teach baseball. We teach hitting. We're not going to talk about bunting here. We talked about that earlier. We think that if you're an elite bunter, a drag bunter for base hits, or even for advancing runners for sacrificing, that's a powerful weapon. So we were talking about kind of our philosophy of hitting. I think it's important that when you're teaching hitting, that you realize, especially the age group, like we teach we have 10-year-olds to 15-year-olds mostly, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think it's important that you got to find out what these kids do well with hitting, fundamentally, like this is what they do well, and then see if their style matches what they do fundamentally. But make sure that you don't just teach cookie cutter, like this is the swing. Right. Like I said earlier when we first started the podcast, knowing a great swing, all these hitting instructors, they analyze a home run swing, with a 35 launch angle and, and kind of this beautiful down the middle pitch that they hit for a home run. But we know that the hitters have got to hit the 9 different zones, and so they have to have an approach that works, and they have to be able to find ways to improve as they get older.
Yes.
So we focus on, certain things, and we don't like a lot of gadgets, right?
No.
We talked about this earlier. We don't like, what gadgets don't we like?
Well, I think the rail one where you
the swing rail. The swing rail is one where you kind of put something on your shoulder and it attaches to the bat, I think, attaches to the bat, and it keeps your hands inside. But it actually promotes a steep swing and your hands in, and we like a little separation. So we don't like the swing rail. We don't like a lot of the gadgets because we feel like it's artificial. But we do, we know that we want hitters to focus on a few main areas. So we focus on balance. Right? Got to have a balanced swing.
Yes.
Got to use the ground for force and direction.
Everything comes from the ground up. Yes.
Everything comes from the ground up, not from your legs up, from the ground up.
Correct. I'd say the only gadgets we really would say are not essential, but can help your hitter is a pocket radar or the Night Stalk radar gun to measure exit velocity and bat speed. Like I said earlier, there are benchmarks that your youth hitter can use to progress to the next level as they get bigger and stronger.
Yeah, because the goal is to make contact and hit the ball hard. So you do want to have a benchmark.
Definitely.
That's a good point. But so we talked about the balance, matching the plane of the swing,
yes.
Making sure that you're on plane early and matching the plane of the swing. So we have drills for that.
Yes.
We talked about the discipline, pick a good pitch, like Ted Williams said, and then hunt that pitch early in the count, right? Advantage count.
Yeah, and we like to teach progressions. We give our hitters progressions that we use to help their flaws. We usually can see on video. We like to use a lot of video and break down hitters' swings and look and find what specific drill will help this hitter accomplish a more fluid and smooth swing. If they're being steep, we'll find something staying playing with the swing. And, if they're leaking on the front side, we'll find something like the grounding drill, which we spread out with the legs. We take the lower half away and rock forward, rock back, and drive into the baseball.
When you say take the lower half away, it's just no stride.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we don't stride.
Lower. Yeah.
Yeah. They use the lower half, but they don't stride.
Mm-hmm.
So we love that. We love that. What do you think is the hardest thing to teach? Like we just talked about some of the things that we like to focus on, but what do you think the hardest thing to teach is?
Non-mechanical, I'd say it's confidence. You got to have confidence to play it.
That's something that it's hard. You can't even teach it, but you can maybe instill it or help someone get there.
And discipline. I think those like confidence and discipline are almost like hand in hand. I feel like when I was at the plate, and I'll let you speak to it too, when I was not confident at the plate, when I'm struggling,
right,
I felt like my approach was like almost thrown out the window because I was looking up there and I was looking to rip at anything.
You
I
were.
just wanted to get on
He
base.
was, folks.
Yeah,
He was.
I just wanted to get on base,
Well,
and
when you got big and strong, you tapped into your power for sure.
yeah, and I could get away with a little bit more because I got bigger and stronger.
Right.
But when I was,
What about timing and rhythm and timing? How do you teach that?
that's tough. That's something on deck. You have to, time up the pitcher and get an idea of, all right, what am I looking for at this bat? I need to go through my approach. And, you know, if this is an elite pitcher, then I'm looking for this specific zone. And I need to have my other hitters relay information to me, like what they're seeing, so that when I get up there, I have a game plan. I feel confident, even if I'm not. That's something you have to learn is,
Fake it till you make
yeah,
it.
fake it till you make it. If you have some sort of false confidence, it has to be there.
You almost have to trick yourself.
You do,
I
yeah.
think so. JD Martinez, who we studied, major league player. If you don't know him, I think he's with the Mets now.
Yes.
Resurgent in his career. He was almost out of baseball. He's with the Houston Astros, and they released him. And then he went to Detroit, I think. But what he shared, he developed a new approach for hitting. He had issues with hip slide and some things that he drilled out of his swing. And he talked about how important it was. He would actually record every swing that he took. And he said if he didn't do drills, the flaw that he had, even though he was a major leaguer, that kept him from performing well, would come back.
Mm-hmm.
And so we found that amazing that someone, was almost out of baseball, and then he became one of the best hitters in baseball.
Yeah.
And so he also talked about timing. He talked about, developing a rhythm to hitting, which is hard to teach rhythm. You can teach waggles, you can teach, how to load and coil that back hip, which we talk about a lot in our drills, as opposed to hitters that go back and forward, which is more linear, and they push the bat.
Yeah.
So, we feel like giving them a cue when the hands break on the pitcher and when they start their timing or their loads, whether it's a hand trigger or the lower half load.
Yeah, and some elite pitchers will try to throw you off with timing as a pitcher.
Right.
But it's your job as a hitter to adjust to it.
Right.
If you have a big leg kick, then shorten up. Or if you have a step load or a toe tap, figure out little nuances in the pitcher's delivery that you can pick up on deck.
Right.
Because it's so much better going into the at-bat knowing that you have a simplified approach against the guy who's going to try to throw you off.
Sure. Why don't you talk a little bit about how we use video? Because we think that is a tool that is very useful for young hitters and why, and some of the things that we do. And then maybe also talk about some of the common catchphrases that coaches use that really have very little meaning to players.
Yeah. So we use a lot of video, like we said before, to break down a hitter's swing and find those drills that we help where the flaws are.
Right.
But we like to slow down the swing and see where that plane is coming through the zone on certain pitches. And we do the fast and slow drill where we'll throw in front toss, fast tosses and slow tosses to see if they're staying stacked. And staying stacked is a term we use often because if your hitter is not balanced and he's not staying back with his load once he's set and not leaking, then, we just want to see that he's, in a good hitting position.
We call it a strong position, just before a heel strike. Every major leaguer is actually in almost the same exact position just before a heel strike. No matter where they start, hands high, hands low, stuff like that. It doesn't really matter. Although the greatest hitters of all time, it seems like their hands were low. I know Trout's are high.
Trout's high, yeah.
But Johnny just used the term staying stacked. And what Johnny is great, and I'll brag on him a little bit, is because he's a switch hitter. And so when we do drills and we do a stack drill, why don't you explain to him how you work with lefties and righty hitters?
Yeah, so I have the unique perspective that if we're working with a lefty and a righty in a session, that I can switch over to the other side and show them, parallel hitting is a great way, especially the last progression of parallel hitting where your back foot is turned.
Yeah.
So you're already in a position to launch.
It's hard to demonstrate here.
Yeah.
But parallel hitting is with the back foot foot turned is something that we've been using a lot of because we demonstrate these things. And Johnny, being a lefty and a righty hitter, can demonstrate a lot of these drills. He mentioned the word progression. We go from, like, say we're working a lower half drill. We'll do 2 lower half drills, and then we'll immediately have the hitter hit normally, hit regular.
Mm-hmm.
What we're trying to see is if that drill and the benefit of that drill is kind of blending into their regular swing.
Yeah, what we don't want to happen is we drill this numerous times in the session and hoping they're working on their own, but they come back the next week and the flaw is still there. So then we have to rework that progression and hope it sticks. But it's really up to the hitter away from the session to work this drill out, and hopefully it stays in him and it translates into the game.
I think also if we show them that, hey, we just did 2 drills and then you hit regular and you're hitting your normal way, like, or you're just without a drill, just hit. I'll tell them, all right, we just did these 2 drills, now just hit. And then when we see that maybe they're on plane a little bit better, or they're using their legs more, or they're keeping their front side in better, or whatever it is that we're trying to accomplish, they can feel it. And when they're getting good hits, they obviously can see it too. So I think we call it the progression, and making sure that you do a couple of drills that maybe will work like a path, and then we say hit regular, and then they can feel like, this is creeping into my regular swing.
Yeah.
So anyway, we find that to be very, very valuable because they get that feedback that they want, and it gives them maybe, more ability to want to work on their own.
Yeah, and if it's a plane, like if they're not staying on plane, we use the top hand, bottom hand drills. We use the crisscrossed grip drill for more control. And it can have negative impacts for a hitter if we use a plane drill that, might not work for one youth hitter, but another one it works great for. So we always, that's why we watch the video a lot, is seeing, like, is this impacting him in the correct way or the wrong way? And we'll cut off a drill if we don't think it's helping them.
For sure. That's a big part.
Yeah.
Like if a drill, there's different path drills, there's different, rotational drills, we do a pitch recognition drill. There's different drills that you can do. And if we feel like it's not working for this particular hitter, we'll try a different drill to maybe get something that we're trying to get to. I think that's really important.
So as we mentioned, some common phrases that we kind of stay away from because we don't want a hitter to take something and translate it the wrong way. Stuff like squashing the bug is when your back foot, you're sitting and spinning. That's usually what they translate it into, and we don't want that. We want you to hit into a strong post leg with some rotational power from your hips.
What other phrases?
Another phrase I would say is throwing your hands down at the ball, because that can create a steep swing. You don't want to throw down your hands to the ball. You are going down to the baseball, but you're getting in the path, but you're not dropping the barrel.
Right.
We call it dumping the barrel. You don't. So for our audio listeners, dumping the barrel is when your barrel has been dumped, and now your only position to come up from this is to rise and either roll your hands over or attack it at a higher angle. Or if you're staying steep, you're going down to the ball, and you'll hear a lot of coaches talk about getting that backspin. But if you're steep, you have to catch it at such a small window where if the mic is the baseball, I have to catch it at this angle, where if I'm in the zone and I'm on plane with the pitch, I have so much more barrel. Even if I slightly miss the baseball, I have so much more barrel to stay through and produce a line drive swing.
Right. So I guess the point we're trying to make is when you're talking to young hitters, if you use phrases and you don't explain what it is, then it just loses all its meaning.
Definitely.
Like leaking and, and things like that. So we're just very conscious of saying the catchphrases that coaches constantly say and making sure that they at least know what you mean.
Right.
One of the things that I want to talk about before we kind of close this is we talked a little bit about gadgets, and, there's a big trend towards sensors. The blast motion and ZEP used to be a big one, but they discontinued that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know after a lot of research and even using some of them, I don't really believe in them. I feel like it's overused. I feel like the sensors don't actually measure what they say they
There's
measure.
very few things in them that you're going to take away and say, I know what I understand from this, right?
Yeah, launch quickness is one where, like, from the moment that I saw this guy, we look at a lot of different gurus online. Teacherman, who does the Aaron Judge, he's very controversial because he tells you to actually snap your hands back, which I've never seen anybody, but does a good job with coiling the back, the back hip and kind of riding that leg to time up the baseball. But he says his app will allow you, which he's selling, his app will allow you to measure from the moment that you decide to launch the swing to when you hit the ball. Well, how does a sensor know when you decide to launch the swing?
Yeah.
So I didn't understand that. And then a lot of his other teachings, his head's moving and he's snapping back, and he loves the barrel like this. So he teaches only really home run hitters. And if you're in high school or you're middle school, you don't need to be listening to the teacherman. That's just my opinion. But gadgets, it really should be, drills that match what you're trying to accomplish because of your flaw that you can see on video that's causing you to miss the barrel. And then maybe, like you said, a pocket radar or something to measure your exit velocity
you want a good
as a benchmark.
Yeah.
So you could say, hey, if I want to play college baseball, I need to be hitting the ball off the tee at like 90 miles an hour. When I hit it hard, when I hit it square. You do want to have a good launch quickness.
Mm-hmm.
But you can work on that and see that in video, and you can kind of feel it, I think.
Definitely. Oh, yeah.
So attack angle and launch angle, one of the things, and maybe you should talk a little bit about the percentages that produce hits.
Yeah, if you have a launch angle between, like 20 to 40 degrees, you're going to get a smooth line drive, rising line drive.
Yeah, soaring line drive.
Yeah, and that's what you're shooting for. You want to shoot for line drives that are traveling at an upward trajectory, but you don't want
if you're going above 40.
Yeah.
Let's say that first. That's a fly ball.
That's a fly ball. Right?
We don't want to teach fly balls. Maybe Aaron Judge does. Maybe he wants 40, 45 launch angle.
Yeah, because his fly balls will travel a lot farther. He's
right.
6'7", 280 pounds.
Right.
And we've seen some of his fly balls get out of the ballpark.
So what do you think is a good launch angle? Like, and again, it's hard to teach launch angle because you're really teaching the attack angle, the angle that your bat is going towards the ball, which is going to produce it. But also there are other factors involved, like
the pitch height,
and where you catch the ball out front or deep.
Yeah.
What do you think they should be focused on?
Watch the bat speed, look at the exit velocity, and the launch angles in a certain range of 20 to 40 degrees.
I would say I like 15 to 25. That seems more line drive-ish.
Okay.
That's just me. You might like you're 6 foot, 205 pounds, so you might like that. That I understand why you like that, but for me, I wouldn't like that.
Negative launch angle will produce ground balls.
Yeah, for sure.
Steep.
Yeah, if you're going steep, and I would say, I've read The Art of Hitting 300 by Charlie Lau. He was too linear for me. I read, the Ted Williams book, The Science of Hitting. I like that. It was a little simplified compared to today's books. I like Dead Red Hitting. You worked with Connor Powers.
Definitely.
He's got a phenomenal website, deadredhitting.com. And Connor Powers played for Ron Polk over at Mississippi State. And, he played in the Pioneers organization, but he knows hitting.
He does, yeah. We went to him when I was still playing. I had just come back from a UCL injury, and I had developed a hip slide from my right side.
Yep.
My left side, not so much. Didn't affect it as much. But when we went to go see him, he had diagnosed the hip slide.
He diagnosed it because he saw your swing pre-injury, and you
I didn't hip slide as much.
You changed your swing because you didn't trust your elbow or something, and so you would slide your hips. And he just diagnosed it and said, "Here's what you were doing pre, and here's what you're doing post, and here's what you do to get rid of it or to minimize it."
Yeah, and throughout the hitting session, we started to realize, it was like, if I'm hitting more into a stiff post leg, and getting extension out with my top hand, and it doesn't hurt, then I'll produce more consistent line drives. And lefty looked good. I mean, my lefty swing is a lot longer and
more powerful, actually, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But I would say we like him. We look at the swing mechanic, Jamie Cavalos. We like a couple of things that he does. He does his lead arm progression with his bottom hand, like he teaches the Ken Griffey swing, which is, hey, wouldn't it be great if everybody swung like
I'd love it.
Ken
Yeah,
Griffey?
that'd be awesome.
But he really likes it, and he explains why the lead arm progression is important. I think he misses the boat on a couple things because not everybody can maybe do that consistently. But he talks about the relationship between the top hand and the bottom hand, and that they each have a job. It's not like one's more important than the other. But he said if one has to be dominant, a little bit more dominant than the other, he likes the lead arm, and he does the one arm swings. And so we incorporate that in there when we see someone who's too top hand dominant, right? We've seen that.
It needs to be a great mix of both.
It does.
You need to have a strong top hand, but you do need
Right.
a strong, we call it the bottom hand a lever. It's
Right.
a lever to get through the zone. You don't want a chicken wing coming through the zone and producing more of a steep swing.
We don't like
or rising up.
Right. We do like Baseball Rebellion too. We like their philosophy. So if you check them out, baseballrebellion.com.
Yep.
We don't like the teacher man guy who does the Aaron Judge stuff. We just don't, or at least I don't. I've spent more time on it than you.
Yeah.
But I just don't like he's teaching Aaron Judge's swing. And I got to tell you, like John has said, that's 6'7", 281. I mean, he's kind of in a class by himself. So we don't like him. And we're just wary of people who just go over and over the swing, like that's going to help you. You're looking at kids who need to improve their contact. We really focus on head movement. As we went back to the things that we go over, discipline, keeping that head movement minimally while you can load and land that front foot. But once you start the swing, you cannot move the head. We teach the discipline on pitch.
Very minimal. Yeah, like you said, because watching the home run derby, those guys blasting the ball 400 plus feet, like just watching Bobby Witt, for an example, his head movement was so minimal and his swing was so, and I know they're probably not swinging as hard as they can, but he just has such a fluid rhythm that he doesn't need all this extra movement. He's getting back, he's loading, and he's just staying through the baseball.
Right.
And producing a nice soaring line drive swing.
For sure. So I think for us, those are the things that we focus on. We match the drills. We use video. Occasionally, we use the Night Stalker or radar gun. But we're really trying to not be cookie cutter. Everybody's different. Some guys like to dive in. I'll use one example. We worked with a hitter once. I won't name him. He's a good friend. His family, they're good people. He's so stubborn, and he wanted to hit home runs. He was growing. He was a big kid, but he dove into the ball. And he's great at hitting the outside pitch. And he really had a good path. So he could actually move off the plate and then drive everything to back. He was a lefty hitter, drive everything backside gap. So we were once at McGuckin, which is a little league field. And I said to him, I would give him, I think I would pay for his own lesson. I'd give him $20 if he could hit a home, at least one home run out of these next 10 pitches. Yeah. And I threw him everything inside. And he couldn't hit it out.
Yeah.
And I said, do me a favor. I said, the bet's over. Back off the plate, just like a foot. And I said, now I'll pitch to you. And I threw like the same pitch, and he hit like every ball out. I said, so I was just, my point was, I said to him, you're very, very stubborn. You like to be on top of the plate, and because you think you're going to turn on the pitch, but this is not your swing. Your swing is, you kind of move into the ball a little bit, and you have a nice path. So you like to hit the ball up the middle and away. You're trying to turn on the pitch. It's just not you can pull the ball when it's an off-speed pitch or whatever. He finally got that. Not that it was my doing, but he ended up, getting a college scholarship and having a really good senior year and a better summer, I think, before senior year. And I found that fascinating because you learn that some guys are just stubborn and they want to work hard, but they're stubborn. And you really have to show them, like, this is just, you're not the person that you think that you are or that you want to be. You're your own person. Does that make sense?
Yes. You're either developing a good swing or a bad swing.
Right.
And it's dependent on, are you drilling the right way? Are you hunting the right pitches like we've talked about? Right. And is your approach good? you
Right.
have a good approach.
That's more than half of it. So that's how
And confidence.
we approach it. Building confidence and the timing stuff is really hard to teach, but we do talk to the kids about it and really work on it. Let them know, especially, if they start to have some success, like, hey, think about the best pitcher that you've ever faced and getting a hit off of him, and think, well, if I can hit off of this guy, I can hit off of probably 90% of the pitchers.
Yes.
We also tell the hitters, like, when you're on deck or you're scouting the other team, put the pitchers into categories. This guy's average or below average, above average, or elite. And the reason I say that is, if someone's elite and you haven't seen like his type of fastball or breaking ball, you may want to take a 2-strike approach up there from the get-go. And so we let kids know, like, hey, if you haven't seen somebody that good, you may only get one pitch to hit, and you may need to take an approach where, that it's a 2-strike approach.
Yeah, I remember facing Graham Ashcraft, who played at Huntsville and is now a starting pitcher for the Reds. Going up against him, I remember because he threw like low 90s and he had like a devastating curveball and changeup.
Yep.
And I knew my approach at that time wasn't as developed as it was going to be, because I believe I was like a sophomore or junior. So it wasn't fully developed. And I was really looking for something I could get through the middle or backside gap, just, not be late enough on a pitch. And I think I hit one off my knuckles to the shortstop and hit like a little dinker, ground out.
Yeah.
But I think if I could go back now with the knowledge I have and the approach that I learned throughout the rest of my time playing, I would say, he throws hard, and, we haven't seen many guys like this year. I would want to probably stay off the plate a little bit and, probably choke up or shorten up my...
Control the barrel.
Yeah, I want to control the barrel more. I want to shorten up my load and just let the ball travel and poke something to the backside gap. And, anything off my hands, I'm going to take an emergency swing and try to foul off if I can get there in time.
For sure. So, and that's Johnny. He doesn't play, competitively anymore, but he's thinking in terms of what he would have done. So he shares these things with the young hitters. So in closing, one of the things I do want to close with is, there are so many different styles, open to close, and high hands, low hands, and big leg kicks, short leg kicks. You talked about shortening load or minimizing your load. I think the hitters probably need to figure out what gets them into that launch position before heel strike, in the right position to hit the ball, kind of right out front, or if they're going backside gap, maybe a little bit deeper. I think they have to experiment with these. Some guys go open to close and they can never get that inside pitch. Some guys have big leg kicks and they're just never on time. And I kind of go, you may want to try a step load. You may want to try a stack load, like a chipper, thing. So we think styles are great. There's different ways to skin that cat, but you've got to match that style with the fundamentals so that you're in the right position.
And I used to try to emulate Bryce Harper and some of my favorite hitters, and it never worked out for me because I would end up closing my swing off lefty.
Right.
I had no problem righty staying square, but I was always good square because if I could recognize the pitch, I know where to go with it.
Right.
Open my hips up on an inside pitch, drive my back knee going the other way. We got pretty good there at the end when I was playing college.
Definitely. And I would say that that's the thing we share with the hitters, just to close this out, is that you have to keep working on your approach. You have to, if you found a good one, really perfect it. You can make changes to it if it's not working, for sure, but not everybody's the same. So know what your strengths are, strengthen your strengths, manage your weaknesses. You really never eliminate your weaknesses, but if you manage them and then strengthen your strengths, you have a chance to be a really good hitter.
Definitely. Yeah.
So
thank you for checking us out today. This is teaching on hitting, and we want you to like, share, and subscribe our podcast. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, iHeart Radio. Thank you.
Thanks.